Hi everyone and welcome to Singapore Changi Airport, where it's compulsory to get a photo of the Jewel waterfall, otherwise you didn't actually go there. This flight was the second leg of my trip to Frankfurt, so I already had my boarding pass. But Singapore Airlines has a separate first class check-in area at T3, and it can only be used if you're travelling in first, suites, or if you're a solitaire PPS club member. From there, you walk across to the dedicated first class immigration channel, which pops you out right in front of the escalator to the lounges. I made my way up to the lounge, known as the private room. The private room is only for those travelling in Singapore Airlines suites or first class. No level of frequent flyer membership will get you in, and even those travelling on first class on other Star Alliance carriers are shown to a different first class lounge. I'd been there a few years ago, but the lounge was recently updated and it looked amazing. It's not particularly large, but it had a lot to offer. It was a quiet and relaxing place. Even when it filled up later, it was very calm. Sometimes when a lounge gets busy, it can feel too cramped or like there's too much hustle and bustle. I'd just come in from Sydney and it was early afternoon. I decided to have a quick snack of some dim sum and assorted satay sticks. I would highly recommend the satay sticks, they were great. Most of the first class flights leave Singapore later on in the evening or at night, so the lounge was almost empty. It had been a while since I'd left Sydney, so I asked the staff if it would be possible to use one of the shower suites. They advised I could use it whenever I wanted to, but it does get busy later, so I may have to wait. As you can see, the shower was huge and had multiple heads and water settings. The entire bathroom was immaculately clean and tidy. There are also amenities available to use, as well as a shaving mirror. This was by far the nicest airport shower I'd been in. All fed and refreshed, it was time for a nap to help pass the time. The private room has a few sleep rooms which can be requested for a block of 2 hours. If it's not busy, they will allow you more time, but it's only fair that you move on if someone else is waiting. The room was fairly large. There was a bed, obviously, a little workstation area with power, and some luggage storage. The room also had customizable lighting, which could set a mood or feel for the room. Not only did it change the brightness, but you could control the warmth or temperature of the lighting as well. The bed had a fancy Temper mattress and could be adjusted with a remote control. I napped for a few hours, walked around the terminal a bit, and then came back to the private room for some dinner. I had the seared tenderloin with truffle mash, asparagus, and red wine sauce. It was well made and tasted great. For dessert, I had an apple crumble, which was also amazing. I could have easily eaten more in the lounge, but I needed to keep some space for on board. I made my way to the gate and through security. Security is a bit different at Changi, and your bags get checked at the gate, rather than when you enter airside. Unfortunately, it was dark, and although you could see the plane, it was difficult to get any good photos. Everyone started to crowd around, getting ready to line up. There was a dedicated suites queue, and we got called forward to board. It was a long walk down to the plane, with excitement building in every step. I was greeted by name and shown to my seat, 3F. There's a lot to take in and a lot to cover, so do excuse me if I've missed something or forgot to mention something about the seat. First of all, the suites class is laid out in a 1-1 configuration with 6 suites on the upper deck of the A380. Each suite is enormous and comes with a separate chair and bed setup. Row 1 is actually slightly larger in terms of suite space, but it's really not a big deal. The walls between row 1 and 2 can be lowered to create one even bigger suite and a double bed. At the entry to the suite was a storage cupboard with hangers, a mirror, and some amenities. Just inside the suite was a small side console with flowers, tablet holder, and light. The dining table also came out from here. Then there's the seat, which was basically an armchair that sits on a swivelling base. Towards the front of the suite was the 32-inch TV screen. Then, along the wall was the bed, which the crew would fold out to make up for everyone. Along the window side wall was some adjustable suite lighting and 2 windows with electronically adjustable blinds. Moving down to the main console area, there was my menu and supplied B&O headphones, a suite control tablet, storage bins, and more suite functions. Below that was power, electrical stuff, and interestingly a card payment reader, currently not functional. Then of course back to the seat, which was a leather armchair. I don't think there's any point in even mentioning legroom because, well, I mean, what do you expect? I sat down when I was offered a glass of champagne. Like I mentioned in my other 777 first class video, Singapore Airlines offers some pretty serious premium champagnes on board for first and suites class, so I made sure to try and get my money's worth. Honestly, if you're only looking forward towards the wall, it can feel a little bit hospital roomish, but that feeling quickly goes away as you keep looking around. It's hard to believe that this is all on a plane. I had the same amount of space as like 6 economy seats or something? It almost felt unfair, like you feel guilty you have so much space. Like I mentioned before, the lights on the wall could be adjusted to different brightness levels, with an additional reading light as well. In terms of storage, there was a space under the console, which had some bits and bobs in there. On top of the console, there were 3 storage cubbies, one of which had a mirror and lighting. Even the other 2 had padded, leather-lined lids. The leather armchair was comfortable, but actually not that wide, especially compared to the 777 first class seat. On one armrest were more controls. There was a pull-out remote for the IFE, and touchpad buttons for the TV position, seat position, and recline. I'll touch on this a bit later, but there are a few issues with the seat that bugged me. The entertainment system was the same as on the 777, with no shortage of things to watch. I found the curator for first section a little interesting, like I wonder who chooses what makes the list. The suite's cabin didn't have any overhead storage bins, but there was a signature motif on the ceiling which carried through to the doors as well.
Make sure that your seat belt.
With almost 500 people on board, we pushed back and started our trip to Germany. The screen swivels out from the wall and could be angled towards you to watch from the seat. But this is one of my complaints about the suite. You move the TV out to its extended position, and then you press the TV position on the chair settings, so the chair slowly swivels around and points towards the TV. Except it doesn't. By the time the chair stops moving, it goes past the point of watching the TV head on. Instead, you're facing the leading edge of the wall. So naturally you would think, that's alright, I'll just move the chair back a bit to face the TV properly. Which is fine, you can do that. Except the other chair functions, like the adjustable leg rest and seat recline, only work when the seat is in one of the 3 preset positions of TV, takeoff, or facing the windows. Yes, you can stop the seat at any point while it swivels between these positions, but the seat control button flashes at you letting you know you're not in a proper position, and so the seat recline doesn't work. I also wanted to quickly mention that the seat is prone to wobbling slightly. Anyway, back to the positives. This is what the seat looked like when it was able to be fully reclined. Again, crazy to think that this reclining armchair was on a plane. The suite door was not full length, but it was definitely great for privacy. With the door open, it was actually pretty awkward staring right at your seatmate as you both ate. They also carried through the pattern from the ceiling, which gave the crew some strategic holes to peek in and make sure everything was okay. The Singapore Airlines A380 has 2 bathrooms for suites passengers, and these are some of the nicest lavatories you'll ever find on a plane. The larger of the 2 bathrooms was divided into 2 sections. At the front was a full-length mirror, a seat, and a sort of dressing table makeup station. Towards the back was the toilet and another mirror. Then, at the front was another huge mirror with a fancy sink and faucet. There was also a drawer full of amenities. The smaller bathroom was still huge and beautifully appointed, it just didn't have the full-length mirror and dressing table. Back at my seat, it was time to start my favourite activity, eating. It started with some drinks and nuts, followed by caviar with all the sides, vodka and mother-of-pearl spoon. Then for my starter, I had a lobster and sweet corn chowder, which was nice and warming. Then we hit some turbulence, so I had to wait a bit before being served my pre-ordered Book the Cook butter chicken, which came with some dal and roti. I don't really know why I chose this, but the novelty of having butter chicken on a plane was kinda cool. I finished off with a ricotta cheesecake, and then the crew offered to make my bed for me. Just look at it for a second. I mean, how freaking ridiculous is this? I was on a plane, in my own room, with a separate armchair and bed, and there was still floor space to spare. The bed was made up with a mattress pad, plush blanket, and multiple pillows. As you can see, there was absolutely no restriction for foot space, leg space, or shoulder room. However, I will say, the bed was a tiny bit narrow and slightly too firm for my liking, but that's just personal preference. I got a few hours sleep and woke up over turkey. I was cozy in bed and didn't really want to get out, so I adjusted the backrest up a bit to make it more comfortable to watch TV. I don't see many reviews showing this, but I remember the crew did this for me back in 2018 when I first flew on this new suite. An hour or so later, I got up and sat down for breakfast. Singapore Airlines currently uses Wedgwood branded chinaware, and you get this base plate, on top of which they place another plate, because why not? My breakfast started with some sliced fruits, which was far too healthy, so I quickly followed up with some pastries with jam and butter. Then some muesli. And finally, my Book the Cook Eggs Benny. I don't know why, but part of me really thought that maybe, just maybe, these eggs wouldn't be completely destroyed and solid inside. Unfortunately they were, but to be honest I was a bit silly in thinking they would be anything other than completely cooked. Not only are they limited by the ovens, but I'm sure there'd be some kind of food safety standard involved with eggs as well. Regardless, this was much better than an average plain breakfast, which I'm usually not too fond of. I got back into bed and relaxed for a while. It was truly amazing how much space this seat had. Sure, some airlines offer a shower in first class, but none of them have this much floor space dedicated to the standard seat. I say standard seat because obviously Etihad's residence is multi-room, but that's not exactly the regular first class product. The crew put away the bed and we prepared for our arrival into Frankfurt. As an unexpected extra touch, the crew came around with handwritten notes and a flower made from the Singapore Airlines kebaya. Apparently this was handmade by the team as well. So what are my thoughts on the Singapore Airlines A380 suites? And take this with a grain of salt because it's just my opinion, and honestly, I'm slightly biased because I love Singapore Airlines and the A380. Put both together and suites class, and I mean, what can I say? I was in heaven. Starting with the private room. What an amazing lounge, impeccable service, food and drinks. Great nap room, fantastic shower, and such a relaxing private space to sit and work or relax at an airport. Flying suites really spoils you and ruins your perspective on things. I was curious to see the new renovations and briefly ventured into the business class lounge at Changi. It was packed, and apart from some free food and drinks, I'm sure you could find quieter places in the terminal to spend time. Coming on board, I've said it before and I'll say it again, the suite was enormous. It's hard to believe this was on a plane. The same plane that some person downstairs would be sitting in a middle seat, elbow to elbow, literally centimeters away from their seatmate. Meanwhile, I was concerned that if my door and my neighbour's door were both open, we might see each other eating. I did mention some things I didn't like about the chair in particular, but there's no denying that overall it's insane. The separate chair and bed gives you so much more flexibility in how you use the space compared to a seat that converts into a bed. The food was good, but there was nothing particularly outstanding on that front on this particular flight. As you would expect, the crew was typical Singapore Airlines friendly and professional. The whole thing just spoils you. After experiencing this, how could you ever travel in anything other than suites again? Don't do it to yourself. Don't fly suites.